Have you ever stepped outside of your own little bubble, only to realize there was a whole wide world out there you knew nothing about, and that all the rules and logic you had counted on up until this point would do you no more good here in this new space? For me, it was when I was a teenager. I was sitting in a parked car with my black boyfriend talking. All of a sudden, blue flashing lights. The officer walked around to the driver's side door. My boyfriend rolled down the window, and the first thing we hear is, "Hands where I can see them, no sudden moves." In that moment, I realized he and I were living in two totally different worlds. You see, every social setting has its own insider knowledge. Our social locations determine what we know and don't know. Sociologist Pierre Bourdieu called this our habitus, or habitus, he was French. And he talked about this cultural capital. It gets etched inside us like a fish in water, to the point where it becomes so commonplace to us we may seldom consider there could be any other way. In my social bubble, I was taught when you get pulled over by an officer, you reach for your license registration from the glove compartment, hand it to the officer, and things go relatively according to plan. So the social bubbles are meant to protect us, keep us safe, give us some sense of surety, know what to expect. But they can also keep us from ever knowing how the other half lives. So we have this illusion of equal access. After all, more women are going to college than ever before. We have laws against race and gender discrimination. So why is it in 2025, of the Fortune 500 company CEOs, only 55 or 11% are women, when women make up half the nation and the world, right? And of those 55, only 2 are Black women. And of those 500, only 10 are Black CEOs. So that leaves close to 90% that are white men. Now, a portion of that is due to outright discrimination, a TED Talk for another time, but I'm here today to talk to you about insider knowledge and how it's hoarded at the top, not really as much trickling down to the rest of us. Sociologist Sadalde Malaku has studied Black women lawyers at elite law firms in New York City and beyond, and she calls it the royal jelly. This stuff that everyone seems to know but you, even though you're working really hard, doing everything, hitting all your marks to be successful. And she also found there was a difference between mentors and sponsors. Mentors, giving the illusion of equal access, they will take you around, they will show you the ropes, they will introduce you to folks at many jobs, not just law firms. But then there are sponsors. And sponsors emerge more organically. And they're in the rooms your mentor did not take you to, and they will speak your name into those rooms and thereby connecting you to people and projects you might otherwise have never been able to access. Might call it social networks, social bubbles. As you go up the ladder and peer inside those social bubbles, they tend to look an awful lot like each other in there. Might call it nepotism. Now, you may think of nepotism as a bad word, but to those doing it, they see it as a good thing, right? They're giving someone a leg up, helping someone out they know, filling the room with people they can trust. It's that trust factor that was altogether absent when sociologist Margaret Chin studied Asian Americans and why they didn't as much reach the top of the corporate ladder, even though the group she studied was highly educated, working really hard, but they weren't as much present in those water cooler conversations. That is, talking about stuff that is really small talk and nothing to do with the job. However, it mattered. Because when it came time for them to decide who to trust with the keys to the C-suites, those Asian Americans were not as much at the top of that list. Now, Gordon Allport has inspired decades of research with his concept of the contact hypothesis. And replicated over dozens of settings over time, he's found that cross-racial contacts, and not just any, but those among equals on a shared project, tends to reduce the prejudice across both of those groups. So it turns out that those contacts are the sweet spot where insider knowledge stops being hoarded and trust is built. So why do we stay in these bubbles? Well, They're meant to keep us safe, right? Security. After all, I was breaking my parents' rules that night when I went out with my boyfriend as a teenager, but the knowledge that I gained was well worth the risk. Fast forward a few decades, and I'm the parent of two beautiful biracial children. The youngest is 18. He loves to be on the road in his car, loves to make money. And so he was so excited when he landed his first cooking job at a restaurant, local restaurant. It was a dinner shift, earning $20 an hour. Not too shabby for a kid still in high school. Young man still in high school. And so he was working nights, coming home, kept being pulled over by police at night, often bogus charges. At one point, it was twice in 1 week. 2 different nights, 2 different tickets, same officer. We were thinking he might have to leave the job, which would be too bad because he loved the job and they loved him. So he was telling a story going around to anyone who would listen. At some point, he came across some insider knowledge. That officer had been disciplinarily dismissed from another department before being hired by this one. Now, the details of which were not a matter of public record, but even just that little tidbit of knowledge gave him a little bit more confidence to empower him, speak up for himself, right? Realizing that maybe it wasn't just him that something was amiss. And then stepping outside our bubbles even further, he was being mentored also by a Black officer, now lieutenant, at another department. And just, he would check in on him, answer his question about rules of the road and whatnot. And so he took a look at the tickets. And he told him, why don't you look up the state codes? And it turns out that the number state code written on the ticket did not match the statute written on the ticket, and neither of those matched the behaviors he was alleging my son was engaging in. So now the court date arrives. We walk in, no lawyer, but armed with this information, ultimately the judge dismissed not one but both of those charges. And she even had some nice words to say about my son. As we exited, I'll never forget this moment. It was like a scene from a movie. We turned to walk out, and the courtroom actually erupted in applause for him, especially this group of African Americans in the back. My son was like a ray of hope for them. So why? Why is this insider knowledge hoarded? A lot of times the people sitting on the royal jelly, they think everyone can access it too. After all, it's not locked in a vault somewhere, right? These state codes are on the internet. We found them. But sometimes when you're feeling so left out of the process, you really don't know where to start, right? On the other hand, this officer, he uses the state codes every day. He's in his bubble, we're in ours. Now, there's some research showing that on task-oriented groups, the ones that are more homogenous, they're like each other on the inside, those task-oriented groups, they tend to develop a bit of groupthink, right? They don't want to step outside, upset the apple cart too much. Whereas the diverse task-oriented groups working on the same task, they tend to have a bit of healthy competition that emerges, need to prove oneself. And as a result, that tends to fuel innovation, creativity, growth. So, the next time you want to play it safe in your little bubble, shake it up. Get uncomfortable to go further. Be not just the mentor, but the sponsor to someone. Take a risk. Go with someone different than usual for your next conversation, for your next relationship, for your next hire. Don't assume what you know is common knowledge to everyone else. Share the royal jelly and we all win. We can transform society one relationship at a time by extending our circles beyond the usual, working toward a world where knowledge and power is within reach of us all. Thank you.